Bam, bam. And we are live. How's it going, guys? Mark Solo here from Naughty Nomad, the largest resource online in men's travel. And today we have a very unusual episode, something a bit different than the norm. It's a bit more serious because we're going to the front lines of the Azerbaijan and Armenia conflict. I'll introduce Tom in a moment. Just for my background, if those of you guys don't know, I have a master's in international relations. I've also been to Armenia, Azerbaijan, and also the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh, or Artsakh, as the Armenians call it. So that's kind of my experience. But Tom, you're over there in the front lines. Introduce yourself.
Well, I hate to disappoint that I just got back from the front lines a couple of days ago. We returned to the capital of Yerevan, but there is a hell of a lot of fighting going on there. It's almost difficult to, when you see people are, on the other side of the world, they're worrying about, they're talking about the US elections, they're talking about coronavirus or whatever. I've got to say, here, it feels like World War III has started. It is that intense.
Really? Jesus. Okay, well, listen, before we get into the actual conflict, I'm sorry, guys. Can you give viewers just a little introduction about yourself and what you do?
Okay, so I am a conflict reporter. I do what it says on the tin. I report from both sides on conflicts around the world. I've mainly worked in South America, covering the Colombian conflict, the Venezuelan economic crisis, and in Eastern Europe, covering the conflict in Ukraine. And right now I'm for Georgia, and now I'm focusing on the conflict here in Nagorno-Karabakh. And yeah, I've got to say, I've been to some hairy situations, but this is the most intense conflict I've ever seen. And not only that, I know a lot of people who are out there, who are there now, journalists and even soldiers who have served in Iraq. They've worked in Syria. They say this is the most intense fighting they've ever seen.
Wow, and it's I guess it's just in the shadow of the US presidential election right now. It's not getting the coverage it ought to be getting.
That is unfortunately the point. And to be honest, a lot of people here think that the Azerbaijani attack was for that reason. They knew that everyone else in the world would be distracted by COVID and the new lockdowns, and they knew that everyone would have their eyes on the US presidential election and not really be able to give this conflict the attention or focus it deserves, which is one of the reasons I want to come on this channel, because I basically made a commitment. I will go anywhere and talk to anyone to talk about this conflict, because it is so important and it raises so many important questions about the future of world geopolitics and everything.
Wow. Okay. Well, because just for those watching, we are going to get into a lot today. It is going to be serious, but we're also going to have a little bit of fun as well. We'll talk about the city.
Just a tiny bit.
A little bit. And about maybe
a little bit of spicing on the top.
So me and Tom, just a little background. We last met in one of my bars in Malta. You contacted me. I think you were a reader of mine, and you contacted me, met up, had a few drinks, and we had a great
never read your blog. I don't know anything about you. Don't know anything. I just need to say, I do not endorse any of the content on naughtynomad.com. I have never, ever read a city guide before I have been to a city.
No, never.
Terrible stuff. At least that's what I hear, because I've never read it. But
all right, that's over with. Let's just dive in to this topic, because I know people are interested about that, and we'll get to the lighter stuff like how is the city right now, or the area right now, and how people are feeling, and even dating during the conflict. What's that like? If we can touch on that, but that's later, right? And guys, we'll answer all your questions, because I know all my audience are just going to be like, what are the girls like? What are the girls like? Guys, we're going to take this. We're going to get the serious stuff done first, all right? And we'll come to your questions later on. But first of all, I just want to thank you. My nipples, they hurt when you twist them.
They do. I have quite sensitive nipples.
Is that like a super chat or something? I don't know. It is. Is that? Oh, sorry. That's actually my very first super chat. That $1. So thank you, Mr. My nipples, they hurt when you twist them. Why did that have to be the name for my first super chat? But anyway,
you got to start somewhere, mate. You got to start somewhere.
I'll take those stripper dollars.
Yeah.
So let's just for those unfamiliar with the region, can you talk about the history prior to this conflict, to give a bit of context for our viewers?
Okay, I mean, first, there is no way I can cover the history of this conflict, which, to be honest, I don't even understand amazingly well myself. It would take hours and hours and hours to go over the basics. But basically, Karabakh has for a long time, or at least we're talking thousands of years ago, was part of the historical territory of the Kingdom of Armenia. Over the centuries, Armenia was caught up being part of the Persian Empire. It was caught up being part of the Ottoman Empire. It was part of the Russian Empire. Became part of the Soviet Union. And there were a lot of people from Azerbaijan who also settled in Karabakh as well, particularly in the city of Shushi, which is now undergoing some of the most intense fighting. Now, Karabakh, we're talking way back, I think it was about 1919 or so, it expressed its desire to become part of Armenia, but long story short, a nice, kind, sweet man named Joseph Stalin decided it should be part of Azerbaijan instead. What Stalin liked to do was basically tampen down any nationalist tendencies that would happen in where the Soviet Union controlled territories. And so, but while it was part of the Soviet Union, no one really, Karabakh was probably about 75% populated by ethnic Armenians, and no one really worried about it. But then once the Soviet Union started coming to its end, you had Mikhail Gorbachev, the General Secretary of the Soviet Union, introduced glasnost and perestroika, opening, and which made a lot of nations to start talking about their history and their culture, and it made the people of Karabakh start talking about their culture and their history, or at least the Armenian. And the Karabakh Republic basically said that it wanted to become part of the Armenian SSR. The Azerbaijan SSR didn't want to give up part of its territory. Nagorno-Karabakh was technically an autonomous oblast, but let's not go into the details of where things lie on the Soviet rankings of who's autonomous with who. And basically, Armenia and Azerbaijan fought a very, very vicious, very, very bloody war over this conflict between about 1988 and 1994. Armenia ended up with a very decisive victory in that war and has since controlled Nagorno-Karabakh and 7 small regions of Azerbaijan surrounding Nagorno-Karabakh in what is called the Republic of Artsakh. It's unrecognized by any country in the world. Even officially, strangely enough, Armenia doesn't recognize it, but it is de facto independent, but is heavily reliant on authorities in Yerevan. Now, they have controlled that. Even the international community has stated as part of Azerbaijan since 1994. There have been sporadic, ceasefires and sporadic fighting, including a quite vicious breakout of war in 2016. But this time, it seems like Azerbaijan has decided to go for broke and will go to any lengths to take back and reclaim the territories that it considers theirs. And when I say any lengths, I mean they are doing some extraordinarily vicious stuff on the ground there. They have launched one of the most intensive military invasions of the 21st century.
And I am most curious about Turkey's involvement in aiding Azerbaijan. Is that very evident? Or do you reckon they're yeah, so it's from what you saw on the ground, Turkey are actively aiding Azerbaijan in this.
Well, it's not even a question of are they aiding or are they not? They're openly admitting that they want Azerbaijan to get back as much territory as possible. Not only that, they have
stated... Aren't they historically the language is almost, it's derived from
very
Turkish.
It's a Turkic language. So this is even more complicated, and this is I should clarify a lot of what I'm saying by the fact that I've only studied the conflict in Armenia. Now, the Azeris obviously have a different perspective, and I have to say, by the way, it's very hard to work as a journalist in Azerbaijan. There are an enormous number of restrictions. It's very, very low on the rankings of press freedom, but I don't have the Azeri side of the story down as well as I do the Armenian side of the story. So my account is probably going to be a little bit biased towards the Armenian side. Just keep that in mind when you're listening to me. There is another side to the story. But yes, Azerbaijan and Turkey they even have a name. That name is One Nation, Two States. And in 2016, Turkey was going through a lot of political problems. It had its coup and it couldn't really back Azerbaijan up. This time, Turkey has said, no, we will back you to the absolute hilt. As much diplomatic support as possible. But they're also providing as many weapons as Azerbaijan would like to buy. And there have been very credible, and it now seems credible, confirmed by multiple, not just the Armenians, but by multiple independent international news organizations, that a large number, possibly in the several thousand, of Syrian mercenaries have been transferred from that conflict to the Azerbaijan conflict to fight against the Armenians. These Syrian mercenaries, they're hard and pretty crazy guys.
Well, maybe, I imagine that a lot of the Syrian mercenaries would have been kind of Islamified Syrians who were fighting against Bashar al-Assad, and they probably could be rallied into that war because of the whole maybe Christian Islam dichotomy.
So there's two factors for why they might want to get involved. One is definitely that in some ways, both sides have publicly claimed that this isn't a religious war.
A lot of Armenians in Syria.
Pardon?
A lot of Armenian. I remember in Damascus, there's an Armenian quarter.
I did a fascinating interview about 1 week ago. It was with the father of a Syrian family. His grandfather had fled as a baby. His grandfather's family had fled the Armenian genocide in 1915 to go to live in Syria, to go and live in Aleppo. In 2012, he had fled the conflict in Aleppo with his family to come to Karabakh in Artsakh. And now in 2020, he is here again in another war. He sent his family back to safety in Yerevan, in the capital of Armenia. But he told me, look, I am tired of running. I'm tired of not facing
Was that the guy in your article that you wrote? You mentioned?
No, different guy. There are so many. There are so many crazy stories from this place. It's unreal. And that guy was like, "No, this time I'm staying here and I'm fighting."
Wow. Okay, and don't Armenians buy arms from the Russians? Like, what's Russia doing about all this?
So the Russian influence is one of those quite difficult things. So Russia sells arms to both Armenia and Azerbaijan, but because Azerbaijan is a richer country, Russia sells arms on credit to Armenia. Basically for money that they don't necessarily expect they'll ever pay back, while it sells weapons to Azerbaijan for its actual oil money.
Yeah, now they're loaded, right?
Azerbaijan has and that's the thing, Azerbaijan has only just recently become loaded. And the reason it's become loaded, not only has it discovered oil in the Black Sea, but until recently it didn't have the technology to extract that and refine that oil. It now does have that technology, and which is why it's making serious bank right now.
Yeah,
and
sorry, go on.
No, keep going.
No, I say when I was in Baku in Azerbaijan, I was shocked by how developed it was. I mean, they have new infrastructure products and skyscrapers popping up, and it reminds me of like a Caucasus Dubai in a way. They're really coming on. So I guess now that they have the funds, they can afford to spend money on guns.
Exactly, and that is exactly what they've done. Not just guns, not just mortars, but to be honest, the main thing that they've spent money on is drones, and really tough drones from Turkey and Israel.
You mentioned that in your article. They're saying that they're lamenting about the old war because now it's just drones.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because what has basically been happening on a lot of the front lines is that the Armenians are extremely tough and resilient soldiers, and they would hold their own for years if this was a conventional, ground-on-ground warfare. But this was one of the tragic things I noticed in my article. I spoke to a young woman who'd grown up in Stepanakert, the capital of Artsakh. She said it has the most beautiful clear skies of anywhere. That's really good for the Azeris because they own the skies at the moment. They have the drones that can literally just come across. And Armenia had previously invested quite heavily in anti-aircraft batteries and guns. They're good against fighter jets. They're no good against drones. Drones take a special level of developing. Now, actually, one thing to note is that since the start of the war, there were days in the war Armenia was losing 50 soldiers a day. Now, keep in mind, Armenia is a country of 3 million people. Okay, so let's put that in comparison with, say, the United States, which has 300 million people. That is basically the same amount. So, yeah, 100 times the population. That is the same proportion of people dying, young men in Armenia dying every day as died in the Iraq War in America since 2003 to the present day. That is a level of destruction we're seeing, and the level of pain that Armenian society is going through.
Wow. So it's would you describe it as a slaughter? I read something like 5,000 deaths this month alone, or?
Well, no one. So one of the problems is no one quite knows the numbers, because both, the Armenians, there are Armenian info centers that have claimed they've killed 7,000 Azeri troops. Yeah, we'd like to believe that, but probably not. And Putin basically came out and said, I think about 5,000 people have died, and he probably has the best information of anyone. So yeah, but considering how small these population, this is a population combined. Azerbaijan has about 9 million people. Armenia has just under 3 million people. This is the same levels of slaughter that you were seeing in the Second World War, the First World War. By per capita terms, this is like the Somme or Ypres or
or some sort of time from the past of some sort of genocide. What, I can't remember, something slipped my mind. No, I'm not touching that.
I should actually mention, and this is a very hairy topic, and we probably shouldn't go into it a lot. One thing that you have to remember is that when you hear Armenians saying things like, our society is being attacked and destroyed and we're worried for ours and all our families' lives, you might think they're being melodramatic. They do have a history for it. 1.5, about between 1 and 1.5 million Armenians were killed in the First World War by the Ottoman Empire. Call it a genocide, don't call it a genocide. Well, if it's not a genocide, what is, really?
We have a very relevant question here from Mike No Go Zones. Shout out. Mike has a YouTube channel, guys. Go check it out. He did recently a documentary in Syria, and he likes to go to some interesting places.
I can stuff. It's very good stuff. Check it out.
You know Mike, do you? Oh, you've checked out his stuff. All right, cool. Nice. So will the Iran side with their Armenian allies or their fellow Shiites in Azerbaijan? Do you think Iran will play any sort of part of this?
So one of the things is, and I'll bring Russia into this as well, because I think the situations of Iran and Russia in some ways aren't too dissimilar. The problems with what's been going on with Iran and Russia is they have both been caught up in conflicts that have drained a lot of treasure and a lot of resources. They've both been in international disputes that have cost them a lot in sanctions and a lot of economic pain. They have a lot of domestic problems to deal with, and to some extent, I think they will keep this sort of on the back burner. They don't have a huge, because there's a sizable enough Azeri population within Iran to cause the government in Tehran some problems. And the government in Tehran has been under huge amounts of stress from protests. Also, remember, Iran still has one of the worst COVID situations in the world. That's one of the things that I think a lot of people are forgetting when they analyze this conflict, is so many nations are dealing with domestic problems because of COVID. They don't necessarily want to get involved in what some people think is still like some silly dispute among mountain hill tribes in the Caucasus, which it's not, but that's the impression that I get from a lot of people. So I don't think Iran. I think Iran will get involved to the least extent it possibly can. It probably will sell weapons to the Armenians if it can, but or allow supplies to get. Also, the other problem is that the Azerbaijanis have seen that the Iranians might side with their Armenian allies, but they have captured the border with Artsakh to Armenia and Azerbaijan. So the supply routes there are getting quite shady and shifty, shall we say.
Yeah, I mean, can you sorry, I saw a message there. It threw off my train of thought. Another question I have for you: what do you think? How will this be resolved? Do you think it will go until Nagorno-Karabakh is reclaimed from the Azerbaijani point of view, or do you think they'll push on beyond the borders into Armenia itself?
So
If
this is
they
the
had the
million dollar.
opportunity. I mean, is there any attacks on Yerevan? Is there any attacks within Armenia borders?
Not that I'm aware of. People here have been warned to watch out for attacks and have been warned that they may be coming, but so far there have been some missiles that have gone off within Armenia. We don't know if they were deliberate or if they were accidents, but it doesn't seem like mainland Armenia is under massive attack so far. It's kind of a million dollar question. Yeah, no, keep going. You were saying you've got another?
No, I have another message here, and it talks about the other side, the Azeri side. So I think it's good to get to get some input here. What would you tell? How would you call the situation that 80,000 people were forced to move their homes in 7 occupied districts of Azerbaijan? So I'm not sure if this refers to the first war.
I assume that's referring to the. Look, I am assuming it is referring to the first war. And look, to be honest, there's a lot of truth. There is a lot of truth to that. Karabakh may have been part of the Armenian homeland originally. That doesn't mean that during over the centuries, and particularly during the Soviet times, a lot of Azeris did not move there. Considering that they would be, at home there. Now, one thing that generally you can find agreement on, even Armenian officials will say this off the record, is that the 7 territories of Azerbaijan surround.
Sorry, they said it's actually 800,000.
No, he's right. He's right. The number is something like 720,000. It's wow. Whatever it is. 300,000 Armenians also had to leave, but no, it's a large it's a large number, and no one can dispute that something terrible. Terrible things happen to the Armenians throughout their population. This does not mean the Armenians are blameless in this entire thing. A lot of them, moved by choice, but there was also legitimate ethnic cleansing, particularly in a town. I don't remember the name of the town, but there was. Pardon? That's the one. That's the one.
I was there. It's illegal to go there. Did you get to go there?
No. We can barely leave Stepanakert at the moment because there's so much bombing.
We hired a driver to take us out there. It's a restricted area, and it's basically like a nuclear bomb went off in this city. It's a completely deserted Azeri city. I mean, everything is leveled. The only thing surviving there is a crumbling mosque in the center. And we went to the top of the mosque and we just viewed this dead city. I mean, nature is reclaiming it. So there's definitely 2 sides to the story, but it's been de facto. If we're talking about, yes, I mean, we could go back. Tango Cash, we could go back, like with every conflict, we could go back. It's like Israel, Palestine. We can go back and go back and go back, and you did this and we did this. But
then again, also in fairness to him, we can go back with any conflict. We're not going back that far with this conflict. We're only going about 25. We're going back within the memory of a single generation. Yeah. And look, if I was an Azeri who had been evicted from Shushi, as I said, I have only been on the Armenian side because the Armenian side are the only ones where you can work as a journalist regularly. There are a lot of problems with the Azerbaijani government in that regard. But if I was what was the name of the city? I don't know why I always forget what it's called. Agdam. If I was an Azeri who'd been evicted from Agdam or had been evicted from Shushi, and as many of them done, I'd kept my key to my house, I could see why I would support the Azeri offensive. I mean, the Azeri offensive is only killing Armenians, but again, also one thing that should probably be stated is that the original there was a referendum in, I think it was 1988 or 1989 for Karabakh to join Armenia. At the same time, and then there were, as a response to that, there were pogroms against Armenians in Azerbaijan, and many Armenians in Azerbaijan started fleeing. That reaction from Armenians against Azeris in Armenia and Azeris in Karabakh. Look, this is a brutal and bloody conflict. And while my sympathies do lie with one side, I can perfectly understand where many Azeris are coming from when they were, evicted from homes that their families had occupied for many years.
Yeah, and it's but God, it's genius when you think about it. COVID, the US election, they timed this. It's completely, yeah, it's like the world is completely distracted. Let's bomb the crap out of these people. Sounds okay. I'm not sorry to laugh about that, but I mean it is quite opportunistic, especially with Turkish support. I mean, we're not living in a peaceful time. I mean, you look what happened recently with the Crimea. We're not coming to some utopia where people are not going to invade territories anymore. This is, I won't, but what about Stepanakert? Do you think Artsakh will remain intact and the remaining areas will be reclaimed by Azerbaijan, or do you think they'll go straight for the jugular and invade Stepanakert and take over the entire area?
So I don't have a straight line to President Aliyev in Baku. All I can go is what I saw there. But what I can see is, God damn it, what's going on in Stepanakert right now is fucking rough. We are being, I was in Stepanakert for about a week. And look, we were bombed and shelled constantly. Like, I mean, there was one day where the air raid siren went, I think it must have been going on for about 5 hours in the entire day. On Wednesday, when I was there, the maternity ward of a hospital was bombed. Now, there was no one in there because everyone's been evacuated to Armenia. The vast majority of the population of Nagorno-Karabakh Artsakh proper has been evacuated to Armenia. But one of the things and look, Azeris may claim with some justification that there was ethnic cleansing that occurred against them, but what's going on here is ethnic cleansing, and I'll explain how. You can ethnic cleanse without killing someone. You can ethnic cleanse with psychological warfare. You bomb a maternity ward, and what you are saying is, look, your people come back to live here. We will bomb you in your schools. We will bomb you in your hospitals. We will bomb you in your streets. We will bomb you anywhere. And so it is forcing them to leave their homes despite everything that has happened.
Oh, heavy stuff. This was not a light stream. It's not a light
stream. There's plenty more. I can go into some slightly more fun stuff about, I mean, fun in a relative sense, but there is still excitement to be had there.
Okay, so listen, we got a bit of the history done. We spoke a bit about the current conflict. Let's change gears a little bit. Just about before we go back to the region, just curious about your own life. Do you have any other anecdotes or stories from other wars? Like, what other? Yeah, that's a problem with live stream, and you can't edit it out. But I can barely hear myself.
That's part of the fun. I think that's part of the fun of a live stream. The fact that you can't edit it, and you got to be on the ball.
Exactly. So where else have you been, and how did you get into being? I know we covered this in the pub, but just for people listening, what made you decide to be a warzone journalist, and how did you get into it?
So I went to university in England. I went to Oxford, graduated from there. Worked in the British Parliament for a while, decided it was one of the most horrible places on earth, and I'd be much safer in a trench in a war zone somewhere than there. And basically, I ended up working on a book about the British Armed Forces, got really interested into learning about defense. But I was like, I don't think there is still, no, don't get me wrong, some amazing war zone coverage going on. But there isn't enough explanation from people who have been there on the ground and seen things of what wars in the 21st century are like. So I started by going and covering the war in Ukraine for a while. Spent a while out with Ukrainian soldiers embedded in Donbass and, talking to them, experiencing life there. Then I moved to South America for a bit, and I spent time talking to people who've been affected by the Colombian conflict and, speaking to people involved with the peace negotiations. I also covered Venezuela for a bit, and like people say, Venezuela's not at war. Well, Like it's basically a
I've
war
heard it's
zone.
really rough. I was in a band here in Malta with two Venezuelan dudes, and one of them, like, his uncle was kidnapped and killed, and
No, that's
they were.
normal. Yeah, everyone from Venezuela has a story like that. Everyone in Venezuela has a story of someone they know has been kidnapped or killed, if they've not been kidnapped or anything themselves. But I found I had a real passion for telling the stories of the people who were caught up in these conflicts. And off the record, saying you're a war correspondent's a fun thing to say chicks in bars. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, of course. What do you do?
Definitely gets you a few words in edgewise.
But it's one of those archetypes, when guys think of like a really cool, kick-ass profession. I think that's why I am. When you messaged me, I was really interested to meet up while you were over. Because that sounds cool, like a war zone journalist. I mean, I write about war zones and I travel to war zones, but I do have a secret desire to do what you're doing. That I think it's really cool, and I think people watching, probably admire you too, because it's badass, man. I'm sure if a girl asks you what do you do, you say, "Oh, I'm a war zone journalist." It's like
it doesn't hurt. It certainly doesn't hurt you. I'm going to say that. So there is a lot of things like that. I think part of the reason the profession is what it is. Look, it's to be honest, it's not a well-paid profession. It's a dangerous profession. The profession is full of people who have. Look, everyone in this profession has either a drinking problem or a substance abuse problem or an alcohol problem, or some kind of serious issue that brings them to this. But I will give you one example of of the horrors and the attractions of war journalism, and this is what I wrote about in my article. So I was in Martuni, which is one of the towns that has been shelled quite significantly by artillery, Azeri artillery. It's an Armenian-controlled town. And all of a sudden, our minder stops us, and he said, "Listen to that." We just hear a meow in the background. I'm like, "What's that?" He's like, "That's a drone." He's like, "We've got to run." We run back to our car. And but they say, "No, you need to get inside the building. It's too dangerous now." So we get inside the building, and I've shown you that photo, Mark. Maybe you could put it up some point later in the stream of the group of journalists of us just sitting. It's on my Instagram. It's the second photo on my Instagram of us journalists just holed up in that. Then we jump on the. Eventually, situation clears. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. And these journalists, a bit over filtered for my liking, but still, it gives you an idea of what we were up. That's me in the middle, right there.
Yeah, what a badass picture, dude.
Dude, I'm not. Get good Tinder photos. Get good Tinder photos as a war correspondent as well. But anyway, so we get out of that, and so we jump in the van. We start driving. About 5 minutes out of Martini, a huge explosion just smashes the ground. Maybe about 50 meters away from us. We feel the shock wave. Like we hear the explosion, a huge plume of white smoke comes up. All of a sudden, our driver literally just slams on the accelerator as hard as he can. We start going about 150 kilometers an hour down this like narrow, winding road. Skidding around corners. You can hear like the rubber screeching, the tires screeching. In the distance, well, not in the distance, about another 50, 100 meters to our right, you can see drone strikes going off in the trees near us. This guy just keeps driving like this. He drives like this for about 15 minutes. We called him Michael Schumacher, actually, after a while. And we could tell, let's be honest, he was actually fucking loving this. And then we got back and we jumped out and we're like, "Oh my God, that was so scary. We almost died." And that's true. It was also one of the most exhilarating experiences of your life. And that's the thing. You experience the best and the worst of life in such a short space of time. There becomes almost something a little bit addictive about it.
Yeah, I can.
And then there's also, the acclaim that you get from people around you by saying, "You're so brave doing this. We love you doing this," and stuff like that. It's a job that has, you see the best and the worst of the world, and that can be quite addictive for someone with a particular personality.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can definitely relate with the Warzone stuff. It's like a moth being drawn to the flame. There's something intoxicating about the being
Yeah,
that close to destruction. I mean, it's like people who go skydiving or people who go rock climbing without ropes, and they get a kick out of it for some reason.
yeah,
It's a
yes.
weird. Guys are weird, you know. we and some guys
Winston
do not feel this
Churchill.
way. You go on. I feel a good quote coming on.
Pardon? So Winston Churchill once said,
Yeah.
"There is nothing so exhilarating as being shot at without effect," and he's right. Actually, you say guys are weird. You'd be surprised how many girls are involved in this. Like,
I've seen on social media a lot of Armenian girls like posting selfies with guns with their
no,
dads, like we gonna
yeah, yeah,
kill
no, no,
some.
it is true. It has like so. I've heard this thing in the manosphere. It's like, oh yeah, men are the natural hunters and women are the risk averse, blah 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 blah. And maybe that's like true in like a statistical aggregate. I bet you every single manosphere dweeb who's ever said, oh yeah, women are the non-risk taking sex would shit their pants before they got in, 10 miles of a conflict that I've seen a bunch of super hard ass chicks literally
Probably
go to
hot
the
chicks.
front line with the soldiers, get shot at, nearly die, and come back and be like, oh, that was horrible. I'm going to do it again tomorrow. Like, I admit some of the most, I consider myself a pretty brave guy. I've got to say, these girls are even braver than me. They're taking even bigger risks than I
Well,
was out there.
Armenians and Azerbaijanis actually, Azeris, I guess you would call them. Yeah, but they're passionate people. Wow, they are passionate people. They're proud people. I guess war does that. It makes you very nationalistic. I have another question. Mike from No Go Zones asks, how influential is the large Armenian diaspora in the conflict? Well, you see it a lot on social media and stuff, but just raising awareness, I suppose. Yeah, because I see nothing but the Armenian stuff online because of the American Armenian influence.
I mean,
You don't really
Kim
see
Kardashian, etc., and the like. Yeah,
you don't see the Azerbaijani or Azeri side really, I guess, because there's not as big a diaspora.
I tend to think less influential than they want to be. Azeri's got a green light from Russians as punishment for the misbehavior of Armenian PM Pashinyan.
What's
I
that
haven't heard
referring
that from
to?
anyone before, but it's not the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I tend to think that there's a less going on behind the scenes with Russia, more than just Russia is too economically bruised to deal with all this. But it's not a ridiculous point of view.
What misbehavior is he referring to? May I ask?
So, it's quite complicated Armenian domestic politics, but basically Pashinyan, the new president who came in 2018, wanted to, he didn't explicitly say it, but he wanted to slightly wean his country off a reliance on Russia.
And more towards the EU and the West and go the route of Georgia?
Yeah, like, no, not quite Georgia. Like, not quite Georgia.
Are you in Georgia now?
Kind of
Are you in Georgia now?
Directions.
Are you in Georgia now? Sorry,
me?
Oh, sorry to break. Yeah.
Me?
Are you?
No.
You're in Yerevan?
Yeah, I'm in Yerevan. I was in Stepanakert all of last week. I got back to Yerevan a few days ago. Yeah. No. It's
sorry for interrupting there. Apologies.
But no. So like, I can't. You look. I think what he's saying there is a bit too strong, but I can't help thinking that there's a possibility the Azeris calculated that because Pashinyan was more anti-Russian than his peers and the Russians didn't like him, that they'd be able to get away and that they could risk this kind of war without Russia interfering.
Yeah, maybe they got told they didn't get a green light, but they didn't get a red one either. Maybe. You wouldn't know.
Yeah, well, yeah. I don't personally think the Azeris went to Putin for permission. I think that sounds a bit too wild conspiracy theory. But I think they ran the war games and thought we can take our chances here in a position. Okay, lol, Armenia will not survive without Russia. Russia is protecting Armenia's borders. So I write about this in my article, actually. We were on the Lachin corridor when I had finished. I just said I just need to come back to Yerevan for a breather because it's been fucking intense. And anyway, we got to the Russian border. We got to the border between Armenia and Artsakh proper, and we were stopped by a checkpoint, and that checkpoint was full of Russian soldiers. And he comes up to me. I speak a little Russian, so I saw, Armenia Ruskaya in Cyrillic on his uniform, and I was like, thank fucking God. And I looked in the background, and I saw the tricolor of the Russian flag. Now, I never thought I would be so fucking happy to see the Russian army in my life. It's like, when was the last time someone was happy to see the Russian army and coming into their country? 1945? Like, yeah. And yeah, it is true that if Russia does decide, Russia has stated, look, if the war moves to Armenia or proper, we will come in.
Yeah.
But look, Armenia versus Turkey and Azerbaijan, if Turkey and Azerbaijan wanted to, could Armenia hold out? God bless them, but
yeah. Well, I mean, it's when you have like money, manpower, and backup from Turkey,
and everything.
And America are unlikely to step up either.
American saying shit. And that's actually the question that was asked before about the Armenian diaspora. Yes, they've donated a lot of money, but I don't think they've been as influential. Like the one thing the Armenian diaspora could do really well would be if they were able to influence policy of a major country to seriously intervene diplomatically with Turkey in this war. They haven't done that so far. Maybe they will in future. They haven't done that so far. Then again, it's only been a month. Feels like it's been a year. It feels like it's been years.
Ceasefire lasted like an hour?
The first ceasefire lasted, I think, 6 minutes. Second ceasefire, I think, lasted like 12 minutes. Third ceasefire did okay, lasted 45 minutes. There.
Yeah,
I was there for
on Twitter saying he saved the world. Okay, one sec. Irish Partisan says Russia has a lot on its plate with events in Belarus, Eastern Ukraine, and Syria. Its conduct with Armenia is pragmatic. Armenia is a member of the CSTO, but it is not getting directly attacked by Azerbaijan. Technically, yes, because it's in the disputed area.
Irish Partisan, I agree more or less with his analysis. So just for those who don't know, the CSTO is it's kind of like NATO. Just think of it like NATO, but for Russia and a few of the post-Soviet countries, of which Armenia is one of them. Now, a lot of people, as I said, have been asking, why isn't Russia getting involved in this conflict? And one of the things that I think is that and this is kind of one of the ironies of like what. By the way, I said I wanted to end this after 45 minutes. No, I want to keep going as long as you like. By the way, because I'm enjoying this. So what happened? I think is that Russia, after what happened in the US election, got this sort of reputation for being this amazing, Machiavellian that could just like play the chessboard perfectly and like puppet master international events as much as they wanted. And the success of annexing Crimea was part of that. What people didn't think was what came after that, which was the war in Donbass, which drained a lot of Russian treasure and resources, which had huge amounts of international sanctions put on Russia. Then Russia intervened in Syria. Yes, it went well for them again. Again, it was a large cost in international reputation and resources. Now they're dealing with Belarus. They're dealing with Kyrgyzstan. They're dealing with loads of stuff. And the idea that, and I genuinely believe the thought in Russia is this is just, at the moment, too complicated to really throw our weight behind. It's much easier to just hold on and wait and say, because I should say the reason, they're obliged to defend Armenia, the Republic of Artsakh or Nagorno-Karabakh, which they don't recognize as part of Armenia, if that makes sense. So they're kind of hedging their bets at the moment. Now, I did have some reasonably well-informed people tell me behind the scenes Russia is providing a lot more military aid and material, that is particularly in terms of anti-drone weaponry, than has been publicly admitted. It hasn't been confirmed. There are also rumors. These are, I stress, rumors that are going around Telegram channels, so take them with a massive pinch of salt, that Russian troops have been involved in skirmishes with Azerbaijani troops on the border and Russian troops have been killed. this hasn't been confirmed by any official sources. This is just what's going around the rumor mill. So, but
I'm so demonetized.
Yeah.
No, that's geez, that's if there's any validity to those rumors, that's pretty serious. Oh, it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah. Okay, switching back to something a bit lighthearted. So you're in Yerevan, Armenia. So are the bars open there? Is there lockdown? What's going on?
Well, I'm going to be perfectly blunt. No one gives a shit about COVID. Like, COVID is just not a thing here. Like, yeah, that's like, who gives a fuck, right? Like, you're supposed to wear a face mask out. Look, bars are open till 5 a.m. here. I mean, there's not that many people in them because of the war. But no, you can still go out and have a good time here. And, like, liquor stores are open, pubs are open. It's hard to say life is normal because everyone is so focused on the war. But yeah, there's no hint of a lockdown, and also you can't have a lockdown in a war economy, right?
I mean, you need every penny you can get. And just for a shameless plug on that matter, guys, if you are bored and you would like to go to Yerevan, Armenia, because you can get a pint, are you tired of all these lockdowns? Take a break in Yerevan. I actually have a city guide. As you guys can see there. See, I have a whole city guide on Armenia and all about the girls and nightlife. And sorry, just
actually, I have to also give a plug with this. I was happily lying post-coitus in bed with a lovely Armenian girl from the diaspora. Won't go be more specific than that. And I showed her Mark's guide, and she said, "I agree with everything in this, and I really like this guy." So there, approved by
the locals.
Gorgeous. Well, not quite a local, like a diaspora, but she liked it.
All right. Yeah, no, Armenian. We'll kind of go to Armenian culture and Armenian girls next. Cause you haven't been to Azerbaijan, right?
I don't think
I know you won't go.
I've been to Karabakh. So just for any Azeris or Turks watching, technically I've been to Azerbaijan, but I'm not about to fly.
You're banned now. You're banned now because
anyone. Okay, so for just legalistic standpoint, anyone who enters Karabakh without permission of the Azerbaijani authorities, which is anyone who wants to go to Karabakh, is banned for life from entering Azerbaijan. You can technically get exemptions. I don't think they're close to granting them. And I mean,
once you have that visa, like I went to Azerbaijan first because I knew I was going to get banned. But our Azeri girls are very sweet, very, very sweet, I must say. As are Armenia.
Sweet to me anytime soon. Just putting it out there.
Not after this interview. But that region in general, the Caucasus, very wholesome culture, a lot of family values, very feminine. The girls over there. For guys who are curious about Yerevan, so when you go to, you're out in the bars in Yerevan, and if you get chatting to a local girl and you tell her that, oh, I'm a warzone journalist covering the conflicts, what's the reaction over there? Or for guys as well, what's the reaction of locals in general when you tell them what you're doing there? You must be very exotic over there.
To be honest, like, everyone is very happy to have you there because look in these kind of conflicts, countries consider journalists almost like we're weapons in the information war. Look, I'm not gonna lie, the reaction has been fairly positive. I haven't had anyone, not be happy to have me here. They all want to tell me, their opinion and what's going on in the wars and what's happening in their families and stuff like that. But at the same time, it gets bloody hard. Like, look, I went on, the other day I went on a Tinder date with a girl, and I'm just sitting having coffee with her, and she's like, "Yeah, my brother's on the front line with the Azeri troops, and my dad's on a ventilator with COVID." It's like, Jesus Christ! It's like, where do you go from there? Right?
I need to get laid.
I'm like, it's like and like, normally if a girl's like, if you're chatting to a girl and she's like, "Oh, I'm busy with work," it means she's kind of flaking on you. When a girl's like, "I'm really sorry, I'd love to see you, but I've got to go visit wounded soldiers in the hospital that day," she's telling the bloody truth, right? So it's like, you get a lot of interest here especially as a Western journalist. I went to buy a few clothes. Look, I'm okay. I'm not the world's most handsome guy. I just went to buy some clothes, the other day, got into them just when I was leaving the shop. Girl taps my shoulder. She doesn't speak any English and just hands me her phone number. Right? And you get checked out a lot, you get talked to a lot, but at the same time, it's quite depressing because you know that a large part of it, one, is that so many of the young men are dying.
Oh,
and another part is that they want, foreigners to think well of their culture. That said, I've got to put in a solid for Armenian girls. You're right, they're wholesome and feminine and have traditional family values. But they combine that also. They're sharp, they're well-educated.
Very well-educated, yeah.
They know their culture, they know their history, they know their heritage, and they are very interesting and cool to talk to and worldly wise. They combine those two elements very, very. And as I said before, with the girls that get on the front, they're brave as fuck. Braver than I bet loads of people who go on about women, women, Western women are all whores or whatever. They're not coming anywhere near what these girls are doing.
Yeah, I think that's a phenomenon of many ex-Soviet satellites. The education levels are quite high. I remember a lot of people spoke English in Armenia and Azerbaijan as well. But more so in Armenia, there was a lot of people speaking English. Yeah, very educated. Yeah, it's a great place to
I speak what you coined as caveman Russian. That pretty terrible Russian that still lets you communicate what you're doing and where you want to go and how to get around.
Yeah.
Have some chat, but is terrible, grammatically completely wrong and
Yeah. Hachu voi.
Я пишу книгу по войне.
Yeah.
I write books about the war. That's a phrase I've memorized a few times, so I've dropped that in a few conversations.
That's good. They do appreciate because guys, if you're going to Armenia, you don't have to learn Armenian. I mean, Russian is.
Sorry to anyone Armenian watching this, because Armenian's a beautiful language to listen to. Russian's a lot more useful, and I'd say, 90% of the people, I'd say something like 25-30% of the people here speak English. About 80-90% speak Russian.
Yeah, and Russian's just solid. I always recommend people to pick it up anyway, and it's not that difficult. It really isn't that difficult.
It's overrated how difficult it is. You can learn the alphabet in a day or two, honestly, and it's hard to get really grammatically good, fluent Russian. But just learn enough Russian to get by on a day-to-day basis. You just need to drum the vocabulary in. And people will get what you mean. And they'll be impressed that as a foreigner, you've tried to learn it, right? Yeah, you'll never be an MI6 spy on the Russia desk, but...
All the best girls are from that part of the world anyway. All the best. Okay. Would Tom suggest that I go to Nagorno-Karabakh to film an episode? Is it possible to travel to Stepanakert right now, or do you need a press pass?
That is a good question. You do need a press pass.
Did you get a visa for there? Or you got away with it?
No. You do need to get a visa for there, but it's not the hardest thing in the world. And I know people who have gotten, accreditation fairly easily to come here. I would, to be honest, I don't see
a press pass though.
But you do need a press pass. But I don't think it. Honestly, one thing a lot of countries are doing right now is they're starting to get the idea that YouTubers or social media influencers are the new generation's journalists. So they may be able to, they may be able to get you in. Now, is it possible to travel to Stepanakert? It's pretty hairy at the moment. Yesterday, the main corridor was cut off. It was just reopened today. The situation changes on the ground all the time. It was possible for the last month. It's probably going to be fine, but I can't give you any guarantees. The other thing is, would I suggest you go to Nagorno-Karabakh? And I don't just say this to you, Mike, because I know that you have traveled a lot of these, dodgy places. It's rough there. It's not Donbass. It's not Transnistria. It's not, some African country with a sort of an unstable government. It's hard war. We're talking Call of Duty. Literally, we were calling it the first video game war. It's Call of Duty, Band of Brothers, whatever kind of stuff. It's hard. If you can deal with that, that's fine, and you should come here and you should do your best. But you've got to know what you're getting yourself in for. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure I knew what I was getting myself in for.
Oh me, oh me, oh my. Tom, we have to go to Kabul together, Afghanistan. I'm dying to go
Oh,
there.
I've never been to Africa. I've never been to Africa. My Middle East experience is sadly lacking.
I'm dying to
So,
go. I've been
no, I'd
dying to go there
love
for
to
years.
come.
Yeah, I got my fix, a little bit of fix of danger this year. I don't know if you know what happened to me 2 weeks ago. I had a fire on my sailboat and I had to get rescued by the Italian Coast
No,
Guard.
I didn't see. Well, I did not see that. No.
Yeah, I
Well,
tried to
I
sail
mean,
across the
fairness,
Mediterranean.
I was taking a little bit of fire myself, so I think I hope I'm given there. Yeah.
For those curious, because I know I'm getting loads of questions about what happened and the rescue and stuff. I'm posting a video about the whole experience. I got a load of footage during the trip. I'm posting a video about the horror story tomorrow or maybe Monday for those curious about the sailboat incident. But yeah, so a bit of danger. You like a bit of danger, myself included. We should. Oh, I'm sure we'll get to travel together at some stage to some dodgy
At some
spot.
stage, I think it is inevitable by this point.
Yeah, I have some contacts in Afghanistan. I have some good contacts as well,
Yeah.
like political contacts. Um, but I was always curious about the history and stuff like that. So, do you anything else you'd like to say about Yerevan or the people there?
I mean, I can only say that everyone here has been super great to me, super nice to me. You know, it's a pretty sad time at the moment because
Yeah,
everyone is worried about. Everyone has family and friends fighting the warfare. I mean, I to be honest, I'd never been to this city in peacetime, so I don't know it that well. But it looks like the kind of place that in peacetime seem to come through.
yeah,
Here's one good
nice.
example. I talked to a girl who was a tour guide the other day. She was like, "We're really worried that when the war ends, we're going to have to spend loads and loads of time convincing travelers it's safe to come here
Uh,
again." Well, I have to say,
yeah,
when the war ends, like what Mark said, this is a cool city with a cool vibe and a
I love the
really
nightlife
cool
as well.
group of people.
Yeah, it's just I'm a big fan of that whole region. I like Baku, I
Yeah.
love Georgia, and I really liked Armenia. If I was to pick,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I recommend people.
Tbilisi is also I like Yerevan because I have like a kind of a connection to it now, but Tbilisi is also a must see.
Yeah,
Can't
yeah, oh, yeah.
comment on that. Azerbaijan,
Georgia's
I've not
amazing.
gone there, and I probably never will.
Georgia's just next level. No, I really like the bar scene and the people in Armenia, very friendly.
Yeah, I love that the cafes are open till 2 a.m. So how I'm a night owl.
Kalamat's still open. I love that bar. Do you know? Have you been to Kalamat? It's kind of like a hidden
Yeah.
bar. Is it still open?
Yeah, it's still open, still
Nice.
going.
They
No,
got a lot of
it's obviously
live
not that
music.
bad, but there are still people going out. I'm like, yeah,
Nice.
still
Nice.
people to see things to do.
So, Nick, we're coming up on the hour. So
Hour.
for people who want to follow you and see what you're up to, and also read your articles, where can they go?
Okay, so I have actually been a bad journalist and have only just gotten on Twitter and have a very limited presence there. But my name is
This is a good thing.
the Scribe. Scribe like the person who writes.
Yeah.
I'm more active on Instagram, which is at ntmutch. And I just released a long feature about my experiences in the war and the conflict, which I sent to you, Mark. If you could link that below the article, that'd be great. Send some traffic there. Convince my
that's your Instagram.
Yep. Who's that handsome man there?
Hey, look, you got some dope pictures, man. Nice. Okay. Oh yes, we get a feel for you. Yeah, guys. So definitely follow Tom there, and I've also I think I have your article actually pulled up here, and yeah, here we go. That's the recent article he wrote on the Byline Times. Don't worry, be happy. It's a really, really good article. Crazy experiences. I love the way you tell the story, and the people you meet and what your experiences there. Just
Oh yeah,
mad.
just by the way, if you want to go up that, just if you want to go back up there, just to tell people that guy there, we were driving along the road and we just stopped to pick him up as a hitchhiker, and he said his village in a province called Hadrut had just been destroyed. and he wanted to sneak in there at night with his AK and just start firing at Azerbaijani troops and take as many of them as he could before he went.
God, look, he's wearing the jeans and the suit jacket. I swear he's going to a baptism or something.
Yeah, except with the AK with 2 extra magazines strapped to it.
So, yeah, you know, his only ambition is revenge. You know, he looks angry. He looks, yeah, that's just a dude. That's just a dude. He's not even army. Like, where do you get the gun?
Where do you get the what?
Where do you get the gun?
There's a lot of them in Armenia. Well, Armenia's just Armenia and Azerbaijan both very militarized societies. You know, everyone knows how to get a gun. Everyone knows how to get, you know, ammunition, and everyone has some sort of fighting training in their lives, because all of them in the back of their minds have been preparing for this kind of war for long.
Like, is there mandatory military service in Armenia?
For men, yeah. But I have a lot of women complaining that's sexist. I want to join the army too. So yeah.
I don't know if that'd be a good thing. Like, you know, you look at in Israel, it kind of it masculizes the women quite a bit. But it looks like they need every
women are pretty hardcore, like whether you standing or not.
Yeah. All right, listen, Tom, absolute pleasure catching up with you again.
Pleasure to see you again as well. Always a pleasure. Always will be, I'm sure.
And hopefully we can
Kabul is on the cards.
Yeah, hopefully we can chat over a pint next time we see each other, or maybe I'll get you on a few weeks down the line, see how things are going there, or maybe you've moved on to another conflict zone. Guys, thank you very much.
I'm quite happy. So we just got announced. So I live in London normally. I'm from New Zealand, by the way, just born and raised. We just got announced another lockdown there. They say it'll be a month. We know it'll be more than a monmonth.
Stay
there. Going back there. Fucking going to be watching my room for a month.
Exactly. Oh God, I'd love to be over there. We just they closed all my bars last week, so I'm kind of in limbo at the minute.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Appreciate all the comments and questions, and
appreciate them too, especially from Mike and from who was the guy that was talking the Azeri, who was running the Azeri line? What was his name?
The Tango Cash.
Appreciate that as well, because it's important to hear both sides of the story.
Yes, and by the way, if any Azeris are watching this and would like to come on and give their perspective, that'd be cool. Open to all sides. So thanks a million, guys, and stay safe.
Been a pleasure.
Until next time.
Yeah. All the best, man.
All right.
See you later.
bro. Yeah.